Welcome to this episode of our One Washington County, Oregon podcast. I'm your host, Julie McLeod. During these visits, we continue to explore the mission and services of various departments and programs within the county organization and our ongoing commitment to meet the needs of our residents. The term One Washington County reflects our vision to work together, aligning our passion, resources, and expertise to support a thriving, equitable, and inclusive community. Today, we welcome John Wheeler, the county's emergency manager. Welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you very much, Julie. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. John, you've been doing this work for decades and at least 10 years with Washington County. Am I correct?
It'll be 10 years in December.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you consider your most challenging role thus far in your career?
Yeah, so as mentioned, I've been with the county for just about 10 years, and prior to that, I was with Clark County in Washington, working for a regional organization called Clark Regional Emergency Services Agency in their emergency management program for nearly 20 years. In that role, I was a coordinator. In this role, I started out as the supervisor of emergency management in Washington County, and then have been the program manager for Washington County since 2019. And also have served as the director of the Emergency Management Cooperative of Washington County as well too. And in that time, I've had the great opportunity to do just about everything in the field of emergency management.
That's wonderful.
Yep.
Was there a particular incident or disaster situation that really challenged you in this work?
Well, there have been many. Last sort of substantial natural disaster to occur in the Portland metro area was the 1996 floods, and actually that was very early in my career. Just been around really for a few months when we had that experience, which had a great impact in Washington County, Clark County, and throughout the region and throughout the Pacific Northwest. And since that time, we've been through our experiences with Hurricane Katrina and Rita nationally, September 11th before that. Here in Washington County, we've had several incidents, such as the Heat Dome incident in 2021, a series of thankfully small wildfires in the western portion of our county. I would have to say, if there is one incident, disaster that stands out in my career, you have to mention COVID.
Sure.
That was such a unique incident in so many ways. We did plan for it. Our public health partners planned for it. Nonetheless, it had so many complex issues associated with it and so many challenges over time. We activated our emergency operations center in person for a full 6 months.
Wow.
And if you had told me in 2019 that we would activate our emergency operations center for 6 months for any kind of disaster, I wouldn't have believed you.
Sure.
COVID obviously stands out really. It's just an extraordinary incident. Again, lots of challenges every day, particularly in the first few months, something new every day in terms of the progress of the disease, the interventions that we were doing, social distancing, testing, and then eventually the vaccination operations. And obviously some of those activities are even ongoing to this day. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service during that really tough time.
yes.
Really appreciate that.
Yep.
John, as you've just detailed for us, you have a lot of responsibilities in your job here at Washington County. You not only step in to help coordinate the response when we're hit with those localized emergencies like wildfires and ice storms, but as you mentioned, you led the Emergency Operations Center through the pandemic. On top of that, you're leading ongoing efforts to help the county prepare for various widespread disasters. What are some of the really big hazards facing us, and what are you and your team doing to help us get ready for those?
The type of hazard that we most commonly deal with that's going to have a countywide impact on us is pure and simple, just winter weather. Ice storms, snowstorms, windstorms. Most recently, we had the experience of the January 2024 ice and windstorm that heavily impacted particularly the eastern portion of Washington County and resulted in a power outage that lasted up to a week for a lot of people. Really a very substantial, a very deep impact to our community. And we've had other incidents back in 2008 and previously. That's pretty common. You know, the interesting phenomena that we've been dealing with recently in the past, say, 5 to 10 years is the progress of climate-related hazards. wildfire incidents. We are seeing a greater frequency and intensity of wildfires on the west side of the Cascades. Region-wide, statewide, in the Pacific Northwest, we're also seeing that. Much greater progression, much greater intensity of wildfire activities. Just this last summer, last wildfire season, Oregon broke a record for total number of acres impacted by wildfire at nearly 2 million acres for that incident. Hopefully, thankfully, pretty limited impacts on this side of the Cascades, though we did have the Lee Falls fire. That and the wildfire smoke is something that we are planning and preparing for, and that we're more involved in getting ready for. The other climate-related incident that we're greatly concerned with is extreme heat. Again, we're seeing a greater frequency of those 90-plus degree days where you have limited relief in the overnight temperatures. Also had the 2021 heat dome event, which had really serious impacts leading to fatalities.
Yes, it's tragic.
You know, I think it's also worth mentioning that some hazards that are taking more of our time relate to cybersecurity, cyber attack hazards as well, and fortunately the county's ITS program has really done outstanding work in preventing and preparing for cyber attacks as well too. Beyond that, I have to mention earthquakes.
Yes, I thought you might.
Yeah, well, I wanted to close with that one just because that is really something that the people I work with and our current team have been working intensely on since I started in emergency management, concerned with particularly the Cascadia subduction zone risk, which has a potential to create an 8 or a 9.0 magnitude earthquake, ground shaking lasting 4 to 6 minutes or so. So those are some of the issues that we're most concerned with.
You mentioned the Emergency Management Cooperative. Can you tell us a little bit about that, who participates, and how the group is focused on preparedness and emergency response coordination across our different jurisdictions?
Yeah, the Emergency Management Cooperative of Washington County is our forum for county-wide, multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional preparedness. It has members who contribute to a fund to support cooperative projects and for planning and preparedness. Most of the cities and a couple of the special districts in Washington County are members of the Emergency Management Cooperative, and we've used that as a network and a forum for us to do cooperative county-wide planning to make sure that we're not just looking at Washington County, the unincorporated areas, and the county organization, but we're working very closely with our partners in the cities and special districts across the county.
Yeah, that sounds like a great strategy. Touched on the Emergency Operations Center during COVID. Could you tell us a little bit about the purpose and function of an EOC, how you organize it, who staffs it, and under what circumstances it gets activated?
Yeah, the Emergency Operations Center is the Incident Support and Coordination Center for Washington County. It is where we bring leaders and other key staff from the county organization and from our partner organizations like American Red Cross or community-based organizations to do the problem solving and to do the resource mobilization to provide life-saving, life-sustaining services to our community in their time of greatest need. It's mostly staffed by county personnel contributed from different departments. My program just has 8 people. We rely on our county partners to be part of that One Washington County effort to be able to support in our response to major emergencies. We use an incident command system type of organization, which is a standardized structure for how we can start from a small team of maybe just 2, 3, 4 people who are responding to an incident up to where, for example, what we had with the COVID incident where we had up to 200, 250 people that were involved in the response for that incident as well. So it's just where we, again, network and coordinate together to make sure that we can really efficiently and effectively and rapidly respond to the needs of our community when we have a major incident.
And then if we needed state and federal partners to help, do they come to the EOC, or is there a way to collaborate with them?
Yes, we have state partners can come and embed directly in our Emergency Operations Center. The Oregon Department of Emergency Management, the Oregon Department of Human Services, and others now have regional coordination programs to where they have staff that they can actually place in emergency operations centers to provide direct support. And then we have really good networks and really good pathways to be able to request assistance through the Oregon Department of Emergency Management. If we have a request for services or resources, they then vet out and delegate out those requests out to the state organization to provide support, such as from the Oregon Military Department, Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon Health Authority, and so on.
Well, that's reassuring to know we have that backup available. For the general public, what can individuals, families, and even neighborhoods do to be ready for a disaster like a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake?
Thanks for asking that really important question, because everything I've talked about so far is about what we in the county and in our emergency management cooperative are doing in order to prepare our community.
Right.
This is a shared effort. Again, when we have a major disaster, it's really all hands on deck, and it's really a partnership between government, community-based organizations, the private sector, and individuals and families to respond to that type of incident. It's critical that people prepare. People need to be thinking about how they would care for themselves, their family, and their loved ones if they didn't have any resources available to them through normal means. The store shelves are bare, the roads are damaged, communication systems don't work, so on and so forth. The things that I always recommend is, number one, sign up for public alerts. Go to publicalerts.org and follow the links to sign up to receive emergency alerts. This is an essential, life-saving thing that you can do in order to ensure that you receive targeted public alerts to your email, to your cell phone, or through whatever pathways that you want. Very important task. Also, get water. Our water systems and our wastewater systems are all vulnerable to earthquakes and other types of incidents. So be sure to work towards storing 14 gallons of water per person in your household. That's a challenge. Bottled water is a good way to go. There are lots of resources online to do that. The last thing I'll mention is get to know your neighbors. We know through research that tight community, neighborhood level relationships with your neighbors, with your community, are really what is the most important factor in improving and maintaining our resilience. Very important. We encourage folks in the end to visit publicalerts.org, or also our county branded planning and preparedness site called Take 5 to Survive. Do a Google search or go to Take 5 to Survive, and you can find lots of information about specific things that you can do to get prepared.
And on the Take 5 to Survive, is that if you spend 5 minutes here and there, pretty soon you'll have a good supply of emergency resources, and it won't take a lot of time and energy all at one sitting? Is that kind of the idea?
That's the approach here. I think a lot of people look at preparedness, disaster preparedness, as priority number 12 in the top 10 things that they need to do, and a lot of people are intimidated by the cost, the time.
Sure.
And so I think it's really important to understand that a lot of what we can do to prepare for disasters takes very little time, very little expense, or no expense, and the Take 5 to Survive website is really a good resource to help folks do that.
John, if any of our listeners would like to get more involved in emergency preparedness and disaster response as a volunteer, can you give them some ideas about what opportunities are available and if they need any special training or skills?
The first thing that people should do to prepare is to prepare themselves and to prepare their family. Work towards that 2 weeks of preparedness, of being able to be independent of services. Again, lack of access to food, water. Be prepared for that. Next step is in that ring of resilience here is to look at volunteer programs like our emergency response team programs. The county does not maintain a CERT program, but several of our cities have citizen emergency response team programs. It's a bit more than 20 hours of training. Trains you to be an emergency responder effectively to support the critical needs of your community. There's also the Medical Reserve Corps, which is an opportunity for people with a medical background to volunteer their valuable services in an emergency. People with a technical, electronics, communications background may also be interested in our amateur radio volunteer organization, Washington County ARES. And then beyond that, I think a lot of people are volunteer for, church, faith-based organizations or community-based organizations that provide food or support the homeless, that provide clothing. Encourage folks to also just recognize that if they're doing that kind of volunteering, that also is really valuable for disaster preparedness and for improving the resilience of our community. If you're not doing that currently, look for those opportunities to participate in those faith-based or community-based organizations. We see it time and again in real disasters. It's really those community organizations that do so much to meet the immediate life-saving, life-sustaining needs of their community. So that's another great way to get involved.
That's great. That's many layers of preparedness and support that we're trying to put in place.
Absolutely.
Well, great. John, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We really appreciate all the work that you and your team are doing to be ready.
Well, you're welcome, and I really appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation and to talk about these critical issues.